Okay, so we're going to cover Sentinel of Liberty, Volume 1. Now, this book is actually very important. And the reason why, because last year in Marvel Comics, they gave us two Captain America books. One for Steve Rogers and one for Sam Wilson. Now, both the books did lead into a crossover known as the Cold War that came out earlier this year. But when it came to this volume right here, it was technically the first step that led into the Cold War crossover event. Because this book right here is basically a book of retcons. And what I mean by that is, we're coming to find out that apparently there was a hidden group out there that was technically controlling the lives of Steve Rogers, but also Bucky as well. And so right now, this book is telling us you did not know everything about the life of Steve Rogers and Bucky. But on top of that, Bucky and Steve Rogers, they did not know everything about their lives either. And not knowing that their lives were technically part of some kind of crazy game. And when it comes to this hidden group, they have been playing this game ever since the year 1942. And so that is how big this book is. It's a 6-part storyline, but this is only the first step that leads us into the Cold War crossover event that came out earlier this year. And so I want to see if you guys are actually intrigued in me covering both this book right here, but also Sam Wilson book as well. And so getting into today's storyline, we actually pick up with the first page for right now. And the reason why I'm focusing so hard on the first page is because the first page is actually setting up a lot of different things we're going to see in this book. Now, this place we're seeing right now is called the Forge. And right now we do see a guy right now actually making Captain America's shield. And that right there, that one page, it shows us how important this one page is going to be for the entire storyline of this book right here. And so when we jump over to Steve Rogers, we do see Steve Rogers right now moving back over to his old apartment. Now, when I say his old apartment, I really mean more of the apartment he had back in the 1930s along with his mother. Now, with that being said, the reason why Steve Rogers is moving back there is because it's Steve Rogers wanting to technically rebuild his connection with his community, because Steve Rogers came from that area, but Steve Rogers really haven't done much for that area ever since he came back to life after being frozen for so many years. And so this is Steve Rogers just trying to rebuild that connection with his community. Now, on top of that, this is Steve Rogers wanting to have a normal life, a life away from the superhero life. And so we do see Steve Rogers live a more normal life in his old apartment. And matter of fact, you have Steve Rogers go to a community college where he does take a few classes in art. And of course, he is trying to learn. Now, while being in those art classes, he is able to make a lot of different friends. And so it does show us Steve Rogers trying to have this ability of having a normal life, and him trying to adjust to the idea that, hey, you are a superhero, but you deserve to have this normal life and have these friends that you're making in these classes you go to. And so it's kind of cool to see Steve Rogers be able to actually do all this. Now, when Steve Rogers gets back home to his apartment and pulls out this old school radio, this is going to lead us into the main plot line of the book. And what I mean by that is we kind of find out that apparently Steve Rogers still talks to a bunch of old friends of his by using old school radios. And of course, they use these old school radios to kind of remember the old days back in the 1940s and 50s. Either way though, you have Steve Rogers being able to actually catch up with some old friends of his that he knew back then in the 40s. Now, while you have everybody using their radios, well, that is the moment they hear a message being played. Now, when it comes to this message, they have no idea where this message is actually coming from. And matter of fact, it's just a bunch of numbers and that is it. And so luckily for Steve Rogers, every single person in this radio chat group has some kind of way to figure out this actual message. And so when they're able to work together and to figure out the math problems, the symbols, and all these different kind of things, they realize what the message is trying to say, that apparently something big is about to happen in New York City. But on top of that, with all the different numbers in the math problems, it also came with symbols. And once you put all those symbols together, of course, it makes Captain America's shield. And so something big is going to happen tomorrow that's going to be heavily connected to Steve Rogers. Now we kind of find out why tomorrow is so special when it came to that message. And the reason why, because tomorrow is 4th of July in this book, a huge holiday for America, especially for New York. And the reason why, because right now, New York City is having a huge parade. And so with this huge parade, of course, that means if something big is going to happen, it's going to happen here. So in the middle of this parade. And so right now, it's Steve Rogers trying to figure out what in the world could possibly happen. Now, he does call in Bucky as a way to kind of have some backup, but also hoping that with two bodies, they'll be able to figure this thing out very quickly and save the lives of innocent people. But that is the moment where you do have Steve Rogers and also Bucky see someone who's right now wearing an old outfit that used to belong to an old friend of Steve Rogers, somebody he fought alongside with back in World War II. And that would be the Destroyer outfit. Now, the Destroyer was actually another super soldier in that time period. The thing was though, the person who wore that suit, who was a super soldier, they died back in 1953, and no one else actually took up the mantle ever since then. And the question is right now, who's out there wearing the outfit, but now being the bad guy while wearing this outfit? And so of course for Steve Rogers and Bucky, they're like, no, we have to stop this guy. Now, once our heroes do begin to fight against this guy, of course, he begins to talk to them about the idea that a huge change is coming. America is about to be changed completely. It's about to be waking up to a brand new world. Now, you do have Steve Rogers try his best to take the guy out by himself, but then the guy said, no, I'm done fighting you, and now I want to fight your partner instead, because your partner is a tad bit more important right now than you are when it comes to this master plan of ours. And of course, he was talking about Bucky. Now, we have no idea why Bucky is so important for this new hidden group. But on top of that, we have no idea why this guy is a huge fan of Bucky, because he does tell Bucky, hey man, listen, I'm a huge fan of yours. As a matter of fact, I heard a lot of great stories about you. Here's the thing though, they were telling me these stories when they were making me. Now that right there is actually very huge, because now this guy is saying, listen, who I worked for, they made me like this. But apparently they also made Bucky as well, because this guy says, oh, by the way, I know your code name. And your code name is the Great Century Weapon. Now, that code name right there, we have no idea what it means for right now. But apparently it means a lot to Bucky, but also to this guy as well. Either way, you do have Steve Rogers being able to kind of get there to help Bucky fight against this random guy who's right now wearing the Destroyer outfit. And once you have our two heroes work together to actually stop him, well, that is the moment they realize that technically there was some kind of crystal or something inside his outfit that was feeding him hate, to make him hate America, to make him hate Bucky, to make him hate Steve Rogers. But with that crystal gone, his mind is somewhat clear, but he is about to die. And before he dies, he wants to tell Steve Rogers something very important. And so you have this guy tell Steve Rogers this right here. He said, I failed to execute his move, which means I'm looking at you with dead eyes, talking to you with dead lips, saying that I'm going to die very soon. And so with me going to die very soon, shut up, just shut up and listen. And he tells Steve Rogers this one important line right here. And it's going to change everything for Steve Rogers, because he says, the shield isn't what you think. It's not your symbol, it's theirs. And then he dies in the arms of Steve Rogers. And so we're left to wonder, what in the world did he mean by that? And what in the world could possibly be coming for Steve Rogers and Bucky down the road? But right after that, you then have our heroes go back home. Now, this leads into one of the big moments of the book, because we then focus on Bucky. Now, when it comes to Bucky, we actually see him go home to his apartment. Now, when he does go home to his apartment, well, that is the moment we do see him pull out a marker. And when it comes to this marker, he builds a star on his wall, or he draws a star on his wall. But then he colors in one of the pointers of the star. And then he says, 1 down, 4 more to go. And so right now it seems like because him and Steve took out that guy earlier, there's a possibility that Bucky knows what's going on, and 4 more killers or 4 more people who work for this hidden organization could be coming after Steve and Bucky down the road. And so that is the moment where we do jump over to a random character. Now, I do say a random character because at first he is random, but he is going to be very important. And matter of fact, he is going to be one of the main bad guys of this book. Now, when it comes to this guy, he's right now leaving a message behind. And when it comes to this message, it's him right now telling his friends or the people that he usually hangs out with that they have lost the game. That because they were not playing the game his way, he was able to make a lot of different moves that now kind of have him in the lead when it comes to their game. And so right now, if they want to beat him, they're going to have to play the game his way or find a new way to play the game before he's actually able to win the game completely. And so that tells you right there that when it comes to our hidden group, they're playing some huge game with the lives of the people of Earth. And the question is right now, why? And who are these people? And so when we jump into the second chapter, we kind of find out that some days have passed by. And of course, we kind of find out that Steve Rogers has not heard from Bucky in the last couple days. And so right now, it's Steve Rogers very concerned about his close friend. Now, we also kind of find out that Steve Rogers is still working with his radio friends as they try to decode different messages they're hearing on their radios at the moment. Now, you do have some members of this group say to Steve Rogers that it feels like someone is trying to play a game. The problem is, though, this game does involve innocent people. And so honestly, this is a very sick kind of game. And so right now you have Steve Rogers believing in the idea that sooner or later he should be able to capture the people who is actually behind all of this mess that's going on at the moment right now. Now, we do see Steve Rogers meet up with some of his college friends. Now, when he does meet up with his college friends, you do have Steve Rogers kind of showing on his face that something is wrong. And honestly, something is wrong, because in his mind, he keeps replaying what he heard earlier in the last chapter from that guy who's basically told him that your symbol on your shield is not yours, it belongs to them. And so it's Steve Rogers trying to figure out what did that guy actually mean. But on top of that, it's Steve Rogers saying, you know what, I also realize I don't know who actually made the shield in the first place. And so right now it's Steve Rogers wondering who actually did make the shield in the first place. Now, luckily for Steve Rogers, one of his college friends were able to use the internet to figure out who actually did make the shield. And we kind of find out it's some guy known as Daniel Agboje. And I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly. But apparently this Daniel person was the one who had created design of the shield in the first place. And so right now it's Steve saying, I need to do more research on this Daniel person. And so that is the moment where we actually do pick up with Steve Rogers at the gym. Now, with Steve Rogers being at the gym, is him right now training a kid from his apartment building. Now, the reason why Steve Rogers is training this kid from this apartment building of his is because this kid has been getting bullied at school. And so right now is Steve Rogers just making sure that this kid is actually able to defend himself against the bullies at his school. Now that is the moment where you do have the kid begin to tell Steve Rogers about a new power station opening up right now in Germany, a power station known as the Forge. Now we heard the Forge earlier in this book. Matter of fact, the first page of this book. But when it comes to the Forge right now, apparently it is going to provide a lot of power for countries across Europe. Pure, clean energy. And this is a great thing for Europe at the moment. Now, when it comes to Steve Rogers, he feels like he should most likely check out this facility in Germany. And the reason why, because it's Steve saying, listen, if there is a new group out there of bad guys right now coming after me, and of course everything in my past, then technically they would go to Germany next. And the reason why, because Germany did play a huge role in my life back in World War II. And so right now it's Steve saying, let me go ahead and go to Germany. And so when Steve Rogers actually go over to Germany, he does call it correctly, because right now you do have a bunch of random soldiers right now walking around the place like they actually own the place. Now, of course, these soldiers do belong to our new mysterious group of bad guys that we have no idea about. Either way, when Steve Rogers out there in that building right now and kind of observing the soldiers in the building, he realized that these soldiers actually belong to other groups in Marvel Comics. So for example, some of these soldiers used to work for Hydra or for AIM or possibly the Hand as well. And so right now it's Steve wondering what in the world is going on. Now he also comes to find out that apparently some of these soldiers are also people that he had fought alongside with on other missions while working alongside with S.H.I.E.L.D. And matter of fact, one of those people is actually a guy known as Agent Ortez. Now either way though, Agent Ortez seems to be mind controlled or technically down with the idea of working for this new mysterious group. Either way, you do have Steve Rogers being able to take out most of the guys here at this building. The problem is though, when he thinks it's time to actually calm down, relax, that is the moment he looks up in the sky and sees what's coming towards him. And so that is the moment where you do have this huge aircraft just appear out of nowhere above Steve Rogers. Now, when it comes to this aircraft, it is actually built the same way as Steve Rogers' shield. It looks just like Steve Rogers' shield. Either way, this gives us our first look of our new mysterious group of bad guys who are right now coming after Steve Rogers, but also Bucky as well. Now, these new mysterious characters, they don't tell us what their names are or what is the name of their group. The only thing we do know right now is that technically they're coming after Steve Rogers. And matter of fact, they do send something down to actually get rid of Steve Rogers and hopefully kill him off or possibly capture him. Now that is the moment where we actually do pick up with Bucky. Now when we do pick up with Bucky, it's him right now technically going to some underground casino. Now the reason why he's going to this underground casino is because he is actually looking for someone. Now the person that he is looking for is just like him. And what I mean by that is, remember, when it came to Bucky earlier, he did draw a star on his wall in his apartment. But he did color in one of the pointers of the star to say that one down, 4 more to go, meaning that apparently there are 5 people who do work for our new evil group. And apparently Buck is right now going around and hunting down each of those 5 people, and we come to find out that one of those people is right now here in this underground casino, and the person that he was looking for is actually Peggy Carter. And this is actually very huge because now it's Marvel saying that technically Peggy could be somewhat mind controlled or possibly be evil and working for some evil group out there that's right now trying to get rid of Steve Rogers, but also Bucky as well. Now, if you're wondering how in the world is Peggy Carter alive, well, it all basically came out of the idea of Secret Empire, where the Cosmic Cube kind of messed up the mind of Steve Rogers, or really brought out Hydra Steve Rogers. It also brought back to life Peggy Carter. And so, of course, that is why she's around again and she looks so young. Now, on top of that, the other reason why, because she got popular in the MCU, and so Marvel wanted to bring her back so that just in case fans are looking for her, they'll be able to find her somewhere in Steve Rogers comics or other comics out there that could involve her. Either way, she's right now basically talking to Bucky about the idea that they both have been used by this new evil organization that we're about to learn a whole lot more about in the storyline. But getting back over to Steve Rogers, we do see Steve Rogers right now fighting against some creature that was sent out to basically kill him off. Now, when it comes to this creature, we do learn a whole lot more about this creature as the battle goes on. Like at first, we learn that this creature right now, its body is covered in the toughest metal in Marvel Comics. Now, not all of them, but some of the toughest metal in Marvel Comics. And also has a combination of different fighting styles as well that Steve Rogers has seen over the years as a hero. Either way, you do have Steve Rogers being able to actually bounce back and try to fight against this creature. Now, as their battle goes on, Steve Rogers realized that apparently this creature is working for this evil organization, but at the same time, they're trying to hide something very important. And the question is right now, what are they trying to hide? Now, once you have Steve Rogers being able to actually defeat the creature, that is the moment he realized that it's not just some kind of robot or some kind of machine, that there's actually a person inside that body that's covered in metal. Either way, once Steve Rogers is able to actually deal with the creature, it does teleport away to escape for now before Steve Rogers was able to capture it. And so once Steve Rogers is able to go inside the forge, that is the moment he realized that he's now in the birthplace of the Shield. The Shield was made here in this place. Now, once he does walk in and does get a look around, at first he is very amazed with the idea that now he knows where the Shield came from, where it was made from. But on top of that, he then finds a way to actually access a hidden message that was left behind by the creator of the Shield. And so that is the moment where we see the message left behind was made by Dr. Boca. Now, Dr. Boca was the one who had created the Shield years ago for Steve Rogers. But you have Dr. Boca say, while he was working on the Shield, he realized that something was wrong, that the Shield was technically not America's symbol, that the symbol on the Shield belonged to someone else, an evil group out there that was technically controlling everything behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is, apparently back in 1922, after millions of people were killed off in World War I, this guy known as Wolf Fortunev, and I really hope I pronounced that last name correctly, was so inspired about the idea that humans cannot rule themselves, that the world is doomed to die, the human race is doomed to die. And so because of that, he went around recruiting very powerful men and women to basically help him control governments around the world and people in secret to make sure there is peace across the world. Now, each person he had recruited represents something different in the group. So for example, you have someone that represents power, another one for machine, another one for money, another one for love. You have all these different people out there who are right now representing something different in the group. Now, of course, in their eyes, they're playing a game, a century-long game. But here's the catch though. even though they're playing this game, they're trying to make sure that the entire world is under their control. Now, of course, it led to them doing different things across the world. Like, for example, World War II, RJFK's birthday. A lot of different things happen across the world because of them. Another example, the fall of the Soviet Union. That was another big thing. And so apparently this group has been going on ever since 1922 and been controlling different events across the world to hopefully bring peace to the entire world. Because right now they hate the idea that sooner or later the human race is going to basically die. And so it's Dr. Boca in this message saying that when he was making the shield, he realized the symbol did not belong to America, it belonged to this evil group. And so right now you have the guy saying, do not be a pawn for them, because basically you were part of their plans, and so was Bucky as well. And so I'm hoping that you'll break away and actually stop them. Now, right after the message is done, that is the moment where you have Steve Rogers actually be confronted by one of the members of the group. Now, of course, it's just a hologram, but this person right here represents the machine side of this new evil group. And matter of fact, we do learn their name, and they call themselves the Outer Circle. Now, with that being said, though, you didn't have this person who's right now representing the machine part of the group saying, listen, Steve, it's great you found that message. It's great you now know everything about us. But unfortunately, I am going to blow this place up to make sure no one finds this place ever again and learn more information about us. But on top of that, make sure that you die along with this place, because you cannot ruin our plans. We have been playing this game since 1922. It's been a whole century game, and there's no way I'm going to allow you to ruin our game. And so that is the moment we see that basically they have planted bombs all over the place and they're trying to blow the place up. And Steve Rogers is able to actually get out of there in time before dying with the place. And so we do jump back over to Bucky. Now, when we do jump back over to Bucky, this is actually very important. And the reason why, because he's right now fighting against Peggy. And he's trying to tell Peggy that technically everything she did for America or for S.H.I.E.L.D. over the years was technically a huge fat lie. That technically she was a pawn for this new evil group known as the Outer Circle. Now, when it comes to Peggy, she is not actually listening because she does not like Bucky at all. And the reason why she hates Bucky is because of what he did after he had supposedly died back in World War II, being the Winter Soldier for the Soviet Union. And so because of that, she's kind of like, listen, I don't trust you, I don't like you, and now here you are telling me that everything I did is a fat lie, that every bad person that I had stopped was a fat lie, that basically my entire life as a hero or spy was a complete lie. And it's Bucky saying, yes, you and I are 2 of the 5 people they use to complete different missions as a way to control the world. And so we need to work together to bring them down. The problem is, though, like I said earlier, Peggy does not want to listen because she doesn't like Bucky at all. And so, matter of fact, you have Peggy being able to defeat Bucky and then get away. And so when we go to the ending of the 3rd chapter, we actually pick up back at the gym that Steve Rogers was at earlier when he was training that young boy from his apartment building. And that is the moment we kind of find out that someone is actually heading towards that gym right now as a way to go after Steve Rogers. And of course, it is that creature that is basically working for the Outer Circle. And so right now it seems like this creature may go after different people who Steve Rogers actually care for. And so when we jump into the 4th chapter of the book, we really do pick up right now with Steve Rogers wondering about his entire life. And what I mean by that is, it's right now Steve Rogers saying, was my entire life a lie? That everything I did growing up, everything I did for America, everything I did for the Avengers, was that a lie? That basically this entire time I was actually a pawn for this group, the outer circle, and they have been controlling me, but possibly controlling other people in my life. And matter of fact, he's starting to wonder, have they been controlling my mother as well when she was alive when I was a young boy? So every lesson she taught me, did that come from her or did that come from them? And so right now it's Steve Rogers wondering if his entire life was just a big fat lie. And so you do have Steve Rogers go over to Bucky's apartment. And the reason why, because remember, Steve Rogers have not heard from Bucky in a long time. And so this is Steve Rogers saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go by and check up on my friend to make sure that he is alive and well. And so when Steve Rogers goes over to Bucky's apartment, he's all like, hey man, we gotta talk, because you've been gone for a long time and you miss a lot of different things happening in my life. But on top of that, Bucky also has to tell Steve Rogers the same thing. And of course, the two characters find out that basically they're working the same case, because you have Steve Rogers tell Bucky about the outer circle, how they have been controlling the governments in the world, but also controlling random people as well, because they want to make sure history plays out in their way. But if someone goes out of their way to make sure that the outer circle does not get what they want, then an assassin is sent in to basically kill that person off. And that is where Bucky comes in, because let's not forget what the guy said in the first chapter, the Destroyer, who went to Bucky and said, hey, I heard a lot of great stories about you. And matter of fact, I remember your code name, and your code name was the Great Century Weapon. And the reason why that is so important, because Bucky was an assassin for the outer circle this entire time, meaning that if someone goes out of their way to stop the outer circle to get what they want, they send in Bucky or send in Peggy or the guy we saw in the first chapter. They have 5 assassins. And so this is a huge moment, because now Steve Rogers and Bucky realize they're working the same case, but it's also Bucky realizing, you know what, I have Steve Rogers. He's my best friend and he understands what I'm going through. I should have came to him when I had learned more about this. Either way, you do have the two guys agree to work together to figure out how to stop the outer circle. Now that is the moment where we do have Steve Rogers go check up on that kid Armani. And the reason why, because Armani is about to go back to school. And remember, he was being bullied by some random bullies in his school. And so Steve Rogers had taught him how to fight. But Steve Rogers say, listen, even though you now know how to fight, do not use those skills unless you really have to. Meaning that don't go into school and try to pick a fight. If they come at you, yes, you may fight, but don't go in there and start the fight. Because what he wants to teach Armani is the idea that when it comes to violence, violence is an endless cycle. And if you keep feeding violence, it's going to continue to be an endless cycle. And so right now it's him telling Armani, do not feed into violence. Try to break the cycle. Try to find a way out of violence if you can. If not, I understand, but try my way first. And then you have Armani go to school for the day. Now, later on in the day, you do have Steve Rogers get attacked by the same creature we saw earlier, the one that's covered in so many different kinds of metals from the Marvel Universe. But that is the moment we kind of find out his actual name is Redacted, and right now he was sent by the outer circle to basically kill off Steve Rogers. Now, Steve Rogers realized that there's someone inside there, and his entire life was being controlled by the outer circle, and he was changed thanks to the outer circle. And so right now it's Steve Rogers saying, listen, let me help you break free. Let me help you take them down. Work with me instead of trying to fight against me, because just like me, you're a pawn for them, and now you have the ability to no longer be a pawn for them. Now you're in control of your life, so why try to fight against me? Instead, try to work with me to actually stop them. And so that is the moment you have the two characters agree to actually work together to fight against the outer circle. And so that is the moment we actually do pick up with one of the members of the outer circle, and that would be the Revolution. And when it comes to the revolution, apparently something has changed. Now, he did expect us to come, but not so soon. And so with this huge change, he's kind of like, okay, you know what? It's time to call in the table, the other members of the outer circle, because something big is about to happen. And apparently the final move must be made right now, and that final move involves Steve Rogers. And the question is right now, what does that even mean? And so when we get into the 5th chapter of the book, it's really more of right now the revolution meeting up with the other members of the outer circle. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's really more of revolution saying, listen, I'm done playing your games. I'm done playing this game in your way. I'm done playing this long game and we're getting nowhere. I'm trying to change the rules. I'm trying to make things better for us. Now, this is the moment where we can technically say that to the other members of the outer circle, Revolution is the weakest link. That honestly, they feel like he's kind of crazy. And on top of that, they've been trying to get rid of him. And so right now, it seems like he's about to leave the group or possibly be killed off by Steve Rogers or someone else close to Steve Rogers. And so right now he's saying, listen, after I am gone, watch this video. And once you do watch this video, you'll understand what I predicted and what I'm trying to do. And so that technically ends the meeting on that kind of crazy high note. But then we jump over to Steve Rogers, Bucky, and also Redacted. And we kind of find out that right now, the 3 characters are about to work together and actually attack the base of the outer circle. Now, if you're wondering how in the world they were able to find the actual base of the outer circle, because remember, Redacted was actually one of their weapons to be used to be sent out there to stop certain people who's trying to prevent the outer circle from actually winning. And so with that being said, with him right now kind of switching sides, he's like, hey, listen, I know where their base is at. If you come with me, I'll be able to actually show you their base. And so right now you have Steve Rogers along with Bucky and Redacted right now attacking the secret base of the outer circle. Now, of course, they're trying to blow the place up and it is causing a lot of, problems for the outer circle. But this is what Steve Rogers and Bucky want. They want to go ahead and bring down the outer circle and stop them today. Now, in the middle of their mission of blowing the place up, that is the moment they are confronted by holograms of the outer circle. And this gives us our first look of the entire group of the outer circle, every single member of the outer circle. Now, this is where things get a tad bit crazy. And what I mean by that is you have the outer circle trying their best to explain themselves by saying, listen, the reason why we're doing all of this is because we feel like the world is doomed to fail. The human race is doomed to fail. And that right there is not okay with us, the outer circle. And so it's our goal right now to hopefully prevent that from actually happening. And so that is why we're playing this game. And so technically they're trying to tell Steve Rogers, yes, we did World War II. Yes, we did the fall of the Soviet Union. Yes, we did the assassination of JFK and other things across the world. But all those different things were basically steps that had to be taken to make sure that one day the entire world is at peace. But of course, it's Steve saying, no. Like, you guys were in control behind everyone's backs and you killed off so many innocent people, and you're going to tell me all these steps that you have taken you believe are the right steps to take? And so right now it's Steve and Bucky saying, nope, we're going to stop you. And matter of fact, to the outer circle, they're like, nope, we got to kill you off instead. But once the holograms have disappeared, that is the moment where Steve Rogers and Bucky realize that they are technically surrounded by a bunch of guards who work for the outer circle. And so of course it leads into a battle between them and Steve Rogers and Bucky. Now you do have Steve and Bucky work together to actually defeat the guards. But that is the moment Steve remembers something about these guards, that technically they're being mind controlled. Now when I say mind controlled, I don't really mean like, yes, they're controlling their mind. They kind of basically put so much fear in every single one of these guards that these guards are scared to technically disobey orders of the outer circle, because if they do, they're gonna die. And so you have Steve say, no, listen, I have someone inside right now to make sure that you will not be killed off if you break their orders, because we come to find out a lot of these suits the guards are wearing, if they disobey orders, their suits are going to blow up. And so you have Steve say, no, your suits are no longer bombs. You now have the free will to choose what you want to do. You are not their pawns anymore. And so that is the moment where you do have a lot of guards put their guns down and they're kind of like, yeah, we're free now. Forget the outer circle. And honestly, it's a great moment. And matter of fact, you have the place continue to be blown up left and right. And so it does look like the outer circle is about to lose, possibly here. But then you have Steve and Bucky realize that most of the outer circle got away except one. And so of course they're kind of like, let's go ahead and meet this last person and hopefully stop him. And so that is the moment where they are actually confronted by the revolution. Now, this is actually very huge. And the reason why, because right now you have the revolution telling Steve Rogers and Bucky something very, very important by basically confirming the idea that Steve Rogers and Bucky, their entire life was being controlled by the outer circle. But when it comes to Bucky, though, he was technically being controlled by the revolution, meaning that anytime they had to send someone out there to kill a certain person, they sent out Bucky or the other assassins. But when it came to Bucky, most times he was used just by the revolution. And so right now it's him telling Bucky and Steve Rogers, listen, your entire life before World War II, after World War II, and matter of fact, when you were the Winter Soldier, all those different things you did in your life was all done by me pulling your strings. And so right now it's technically saying that he was in control of Bucky's entire life. Ever since he was a kid up to now, he has been in control. And this right here ticks off Bucky so much because Bucky has done so much harm to the world as the Winter Soldier. But at the same time though, even though he did some good things as well, it doesn't outweigh the bad things he did. And unfortunately, all those bad things he did was because of the revolution in the outer circle. Now, also, you have the revolution say, once you kill me off, there'll be a free seat open. And I feel like you should replace me on my spot in the outer circle. And matter of fact, you have Bucky grab a gun and say, you know what? I think you're right. I'm going to kill you off and then I'm going to join the outer circle. Now, Steve Rogers is kind of like, yo, wait, we are heroes. For one thing, we don't kill. But for right now, it's Bucky saying, no, I'm going to kill him off because my entire life was a lie. This man, his group, they made me do all these evil things in the world. How in the world can you sit here, Steve, and tell me I should not kill him off? But at the same time, not have the ability to join their group and to hopefully bring them down or to change their ways or to make the world better. Like, no, get out of my way. Now, of course, you have Steve say, no, if you pull that trigger, that bullet has to go through me to hit him. And so you have Bucky like, fine, if that's the case, bam. He fires a gun. It goes through Steve Rogers and it still hits the revolution, killing off the revolution. And so this leads into a fight between Steve Rogers and Bucky. And the reason why the two characters are about to fight, and honestly, is going to be a huge fight between these two characters, but the reason why these two characters are actually going to fight is because when it comes to Steve Rogers, even though Bucky had just committed murder and also shot him as well to kill off the revolution, it's Steve saying, listen, we can work past this, but you're not going to join the outer circle as the new revolution. Matter of fact, you are going to come with me back home so we're able to actually work past this moment. But when it comes to Bucky, he's like, no, I'm going to stay here, Steve. And matter of fact, if I have to fight you to get rid of you, then I'll do what I have to do. Because the thing is, I want to join the outer circle. And the reason why I want to join the outer circle is because then I'll be able to take them out from the inside out. That is why I want to join the outer circle, Steve, because these people have committed so many horrible things to the planet Earth because they believe that they are taking the right steps to make sure that the human race doesn't die off. But in reality, they are making things worse. And so my goal is to kill them off from the inside. But I can't do that if you're watching over my back. And so honestly, Steve, I need you to go ahead and just leave. Now, for Steve, he's like, no, I'm going to bring you back home. And so it does lead into a battle between these two characters. Now, while the two characters fight against one another, it does end up with Bucky being able to actually defeat Steve Rogers. And so Steve Rogers does fall to his death. Not really. He falls out of the outer circle aircraft, and of course he'll crash somewhere else very safely. But it's now Bucky saying, listen, you lost the battle, I got rid of you, and now you know what's next. I'm gonna join the outer circle. And really, the book ends on that note because you do have Bucky being able to find the rest of the outer circle. And when he does find the rest of the outer circle, he walks in there, he sits down in his spot and says, you may call me the new revolution. And so now Bucky has joined the outer circle. Bucky is technically going to be a bad guy, quote unquote, for Steve Rogers for this series. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.